안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하는 동사와 앙코입니다. 카메라가 휘었네. 귀찮다, 저쪽까지. 오늘은 수요일? 목요일? 수요일? 자고 일어났는데, 운동하고 출근하도록 하겠습니다. 운동할 땐 역시 CNN.
What his name was. He told me his name was Tiger, and at that moment I immediately recognized
타이거
him.
우즈가
I
자동차
asked him if
사고가
he knew where he was,
났답니다.
what time of day, just to make sure he was oriented. He seemed as though he was lucid and calm.
Now, authorities said that there were no signs of impairment. That's typical in an accident. They will try to investigate to determine whether the person was under the influence or whether there was some type of impairment. Authorities saying that they did not notice that. But again, just a very violent incident yesterday. It appears as though speed was likely the issue. Authorities say that their investigation continues as they continue to determine the cause of that accident. Tiger Woods is here at this trauma center recovering at this hour from those very serious injuries.
You look at that crumpled car and you just realize how much worse this could have been. Josh, thank you so much.
Accident adds more questions about his future. I want to bring in Andy Scholes. You know, Andy, his legacy extends far beyond the golf course. I was talking to my sons about this last night. You know, they say Pele, Ali, Tiger. This is someone who is larger than life in sport.
Certainly is, Christine. And, you know, arguably, no one in history has changed a sport the way Tiger Woods has for golf. You know, he brought so many eyes to the game, so many people growing up wanting to be like Tiger. And, you know, I've been to a number of golf majors. It's such a different feel from when Tiger is out there competing compared to when he's not. Just the energy, the excitement is just different. And at age 45, Tiger basically already in the ninth inning of his golf career. But one thing's for sure, you can't ever count him out. In 2019, he won his 5th Masters title, which was his first major victory in more than a decade. In December, he had a 5th back surgery. He told CBS's Jim Nantz over the weekend he still hoped to play in this in the Masters in April despite that surgery.
A little bit stiff. I have one more MRI scheduled so that we'll see if the annulus is scarred over finally, and then I can start doing more activities.
7 weeks from today, final round of the Masters. You're going to be there.
God, I hope so. I got to get there first.
Yeah, no, over the weekend, Tiger hosting the Genesis Invitational in Southern California. And yesterday, he was on his way to continue shooting his series for Golf TV and Golf Digest, where he gave celebrities and athletes lessons. NBA great Dwayne Wade, he was learning from Tiger on Monday.
I'm not good.
I picked up the golf club, like many in the black community, because of Tiger Woods. And I got that opportunity yesterday to get out there and give him, you know, he taught me a few things. Hopefully it translates. But, you know, to be out there with, you know, the GOAT in my eyes, you know, in their sport, and be able to talk to him about Sam and Charlie and his father, and, you know, just, it was a great day.
The last time we saw Tiger in competition was back in December, playing alongside his 11-year-old son Charlie in a father-son tournament. There's just so many guys on the tour that grew up idolizing Tiger, and 2-time PGA Tour winner Tony Finau says Tiger's the reason he's a golfer today.
He means a lot to the game of golf. I can only speak from my experience. He means a lot to my career. You know, I've said it, I think, time after time. The 97 Masters changed the course of my life, changed the course of my career. Without that event, I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be playing golf. So he's definitely changed the course of my life, my career. But I think I'm one of hundreds of guys out here probably that would say the same thing.
And fans reacting on social media, many offering their thoughts and prayers to Woods and his family in this difficult time. Olympic skier Lindsey Vonn, who dated Tiger for about 3 years before they split in 2015, said she was praying for her ex-boyfriend. Former President Obama sharing those sentiments, tweeting, "Sending my prayers to Tiger Woods and his family tonight. Here's to a speedy recovery for the GOAT of golf. If we've learned anything over the years, it's to never count Tiger out."
Never count him out. Yeah.
Laura, so many people said they never thought he'd win again, and he went almost 11 years without a major, and then he won that Masters. So that's for sure. Never count Tiger out.
If you watch that documentary on HBO Max too, it just shows why you never count him out, right? Everything that he has come back from. Okay, Andy, thank you so much. Returning back now to those hearings about the mob on Capitol Hill, for every video of officers being beaten or hit with tear gas, there is a real person who suffered, a person like U.S. Capitol Police Captain Carnisha Mendoza.
I proceeded to the rotunda where I noticed a heavy smoke-like residue and smelled what I believed to be military-grade CS gas, a familiar smell. It was mixed with fire extinguisher spray deployed by rioters. I received chemical burns to my face that still have not healed to this day. Of the multitude of events I've worked in my nearly 19-year career in the department, this was by far the worst of the worst. We could have had 10 times the amount of people working with us, and I still believe the battle would have been just as devastating.
Let's bring in CNN's senior political analyst, John Avlon. John, good morning.
Good morning,
A lot of takeaways from this hearing, but it seems to me the big ones, communication failures, really put lives at risk. This attack was coordinated, it was planned. People came armed with climbing gear, explosives, chemical spray. But the former chief of Capitol Police said a critical memo before that attack didn't even get to him until a day before the mob. Listen to this.
I actually just in the last 24 hours was informed by the department that they actually had received that report. It was received by what we call one of our sworn members that's assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which is a task force with the FBI. They received it the evening of the 5th, reviewed it, and then forwarded it over to an official at the intelligence division over at U.S. Capitol Police Headquarters.
And so you hadn't seen it yourself?
No, ma'am.
Now, that FBI memo had an explicit warning about potential violence, but also, you know, they were advertising this on social media. So I think a lot of experts I've talked to say this is not an intelligence failure. This is a failure to act on the intelligence.
That's right. Look, I mean, you know, usually incompetence is as good an explanation as anything resembling a conspiracy. This was a failure in communication and coordination. There was this Virginia FBI memo that did not circulate widely enough. Why it was not forwarded, why it was not highlighted, who knows? Who knows why the head of the Capitol Police hadn't even actually heard about it after it was reported in the press? Because there were also reports of the chatter online in mainstream press leading up to the Capitol Hill attack.
Right.
So this was a real failure, and there's still a lot of questions to answer. This was an essential first hearing. There are going to be a lot more from the DOD and DHS and other organizations, and we got some critical questions to answer.
You know, John, a few Republicans putting on quite a display here. Ted Cruz got a lot of attention from the public. He's, of course, one of the senators subjected to the election results that provoked the mob. There he is on his phone. This is during critical testimony when they're talking about what was happening to law enforcement officers. You know, the big joke on social media was, oh, he's booking a vacation to Cancun there. You also had Ron Johnson in Wisconsin spreading conspiracies again. The conspiracy threat was highlighted here. How can these senators take that threat seriously when they refuse to confront it?
You can't take something seriously if you refuse to name it, if you refuse to deal with it. Senator Ron Johnson's display was particularly odious. I'll give you a preview of reality check coming up. But, you know, he is absolutely continuing to double down on this denialism without any facts. And that was actually the most disturbing thing. I mean, for Ted Cruz to get attention for not paying attention, I suppose, is kind of inevitable. But he even called this a terrorist attack yesterday. And that seems significant to me.
But you know, Ron Johnson, what's interesting to me about Senator Johnson is that local Republicans in Wisconsin, some of them have been public saying it's very clear he's going after Trump voters who weren't necessarily Republicans before, and he is completely animated by this new part of the Republican Party. That's all this is about. You might not necessarily believe it. It's all what it's about.
Look, I mean, that may be what's going through his mind, but the reality is that something has changed inside Ron Johnson, and he's now actually, like, willfully playing to the stupid side of American politics. He seems to be totally reaching for conspiracy theories when confronted with uncomfortable facts, and it's frankly pathetic to watch.
John, while we have you, want to get your thoughts on this. The president is trying desperately to get his cabinet confirmed. Now, most presidents lose a nominee or two, right?
Yeah.
But President Biden is not getting a lot of help with his own party. The Democrats are in control of the Senate, of course, because of what happened in Georgia. But it seems like people like Senator Manchin are not necessarily getting in line with some of these nominees. Are we really in a place where 50 votes means you cannot get a functional government in place.
Well, this has been coming down the pike for a long time, obviously. What 50 means is that you don't have a lot of margin for error. And look, I think a lot of this is about the nomination of Neera Tanden as head of the OMB, someone without obvious experience in budget, someone who's been a polarizing figure on Twitter, seen as a sort of partisan warrior, hitting the far left and the far right, but nonetheless not necessarily getting uniform support for her professional opinions in this area. So losing Manchin isn't going to necessarily get you Republicans that you would normally need. But yeah, and pay attention to the Republicans who are voting against all of President Biden's nominees, no matter how qualified, because that'll give you a sense of how things are going to break down the line.
Experience is one thing. Mean tweets, I think, are another. And if you look at a slew of nominees from the prior president that were easily confirmed with plenty of mean tweets, I think it's
anyone who
pretty
voted
rich.
for Rick Grinnell shouldn't be clutching their pearls about this one.
John, thank you.
John
Thank you,
Evelyn,
guys.
nice to see you.
Bye.
All right, brand new this morning, a global shortage of computer chips gets President Biden's attention. President Biden will sign an executive order for a 100-day review to identify and fix cracks in supply chains. Perhaps more critically, Biden wants to find out how these parts for American products depend on overseas suppliers like China. The effect on U.S. automakers has been dramatic, with assembly lines shut down, waiting for the chips to arrive from overseas. Biden will discuss these production cracks with a bipartisan group of lawmakers. Here's what's happened. The pandemic cut demand for new cars. Automakers cut their orders for chips, but demand surged for computers and gaming systems, leaving a shortage when auto production ramped back up. Ford cut production of its iconic F-150. That's America's best-selling truck and its biggest moneymaker because it can't get the chips. We also saw shortages of medical equipment early on in the pandemic, exposing American vulnerability to crisis. Frontline workers were depending on products from abroad. We'll be right back.
All new Inside Africa. Follow the stories taking shape throughout the continent. Go inside the inventive minds, the evolving places, and the creative trends of the Africa you need to know now. Inside Africa, only on CNN. In association with Zenith Bank.
Have you been bitten by the bug of curiosity? This is CNN 10. My name is Carl Azus. I'll be your explainer-in-chief. Global news. International relations are the key factors. Relevant stories. Everyday people whose action is changing their community. Complex issues explained. We're going back to the future. And 10-second trivia. You get a perfect 10 out of 10. All in 10 minutes. Stream at youtube.com/CNN10.
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older. Visit a bar or pub anywhere in the world, and chances are it has an Anheuser-Busch product on tap. It may be one of the largest brewing companies in the world today, but it started small in 19th century Middle America, St. Louis, Missouri.
In 1852, there was a brewery named as the Bavarian Brewery. Eberhard Anheuser was one of the chief creditors of the brewery, and he acquired it in 1860. And then later, Adolphus Busch joined him about 1864, and then ultimately became Anheuser-Busch.
The company grew and prospered through the turn of the 20th century before facing what would become its greatest challenge.
Prohibition started on January 16th, 1920. It was a time in our country's history where we couldn't brew our primary product.
The company adapted by turning to non-alcoholic beverages. Company CEO Michel Ducaris says rising to the challenge is part of the corporate DNA.
We went through war, we went through prohibition, we went through all the financial crises that the country and the world faced, and the company has been always adapting.
Christiana Manpour in Amsterdam, Jerusalem, Sarajevo, Afghanistan. I'm Christiana Manpour in Iran. Christiana Manpour, CNN, with elements of the Galilee division in Israel. As dusk fell, people were still have not had any food distribution since June. When the families have finished looking at the names that are posted on those boards, they come here. This is now a memorial to the victims of the Srebrenica massacre. We're very interested to see what's going on here. Mr. President, it's a privilege to address you from Sarajevo. Do you not think that the constant flip-flops of your administration on the issue of Bosnia sets a very dangerous precedent? This is a pretty shocking picture. Would you condemn President Assad for 100,000 plus deaths? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you. In a matter of 26 days, legislation was passed. I wonder whether you ever think that other countries can learn from what you did. What made you be so passionate about the environment? I saw you listening to that testimony. You look pretty broken up yourself. Does love have a chance still of winning?
I've always believed that.
I'm Nermal Bagher at Downing Street, and this is CNN.
All right, welcome back. The first vaccines from the global effort to boost access in poorer countries have arrived. CNN's David McKenzie live in Johannesburg with more. David, where have they landed?
Well, Christine, you look at the ceremony in Ghana in West Africa, in Accra, of these 600,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine arriving. This is a big deal. This is the beginning of the COVAX facility, which is groups of countries globally getting together to fund for vaccines to give to poor and middle-income countries. Those will go to healthcare workers and over 60s in the coming days in that West African nation. But this is just the first step, and there is a long way to go. We've been talking about how tens of millions of people in the US and the UK have received vaccines already, relatively few on the African continent. And this is both a moral issue, of course, and a public health issue. Public health experts saying until you get widespread vaccinations on every country on earth, you could have this COVID-19 pandemic continuing, giving space for the virus to continue to mutate, develop potentially dangerous variants for the US and other places, even if those places have been vaccinated. In the coming weeks, you'll have other countries in Africa getting these vaccines, while the Trump administration largely ignored COVAX. The Biden White House and G7 countries recently pledged $4 billion more to this facility and others like it to get vaccines into countries. Christine?
All right, David McKenzie, thank you so much for that. Laura?
Okay, back here in the U.S., a grand jury in Rochester, New York has decided not to bring criminal charges against the police officers involved in Daniel Prude's death. Prude died last March after officers put a mesh hood over his head and held him down naked and handcuffed in the street. Last night, dozens of protesters breached police barricades near the public safety building in Rochester. The Justice Department is reviewing Prude's case.
All right, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden traveling to Houston Friday. He'll talk with local leaders about recovery from last week's catastrophic statewide blackout. Meantime, resignations from the chairwoman and 4 board members of the utility group ERCOT under heavy scrutiny for the way they ran the power grid before and during the outage. All 5 of those people live outside of Texas.
Venomous spiders led to the closure of a campus library at the University of Michigan. Officials say the Mediterranean recluse spiders were discovered in a basement storage area last month. The building was closed for 2 days this week, but the university now says that was a mistake because the spiders were in a non-public area. Not sure the students would agree with that.
You had me at venomous spiders. I stopped listening after that. All right, looking at markets around the world, you can see European shares have opened right now mixed after a lower close for Asia on Wall Street. Futures kind of undecided here, barely higher for the Dow. You know, stocks mixed after the Fed chief reiterated the central bank wasn't worried about inflation. More support is needed. The recovery has a long way to go. The S&P 500 snapped a 5-day losing streak. Tech stocks fell really sharply in the morning, but then rebounded after Powell's comments. Breaking this morning, an endorsement of the president's COVID relief from more than 150 top business leaders, among them Goldman Sachs, IBM, American Airlines, and CNN parent company AT&T. They are all urging Congress to act. Business is on board. Republicans are not. They call it too big. Senator Romney called it a clunker that would hurt jobs in today's Wall Street Journal. Senator Marco Rubio tweeted this week that giving $250 to $300 a month per child for poor families, that's welfare without a work requirement. Tesla needs a charge. The hottest stock in the market for more than a year. Tesla's stock fell again Tuesday, wiping out its gains for the year. A few reasons for the sell-off. Earlier this month, Tesla invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin, but then CEO Elon Musk said the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, quote, do seem high, and that sent Bitcoin down. Tesla also stopped taking new orders of the lowest price version of its Model Y SUV without, Laura, an explanation.
But they were in the building. Fans are back in the stands in New York, starting with the Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets last night. Arenas with over 10,000 seats in the state can now open at 10% capacity. Each attendee must have a new negative COVID test. Crazy to see people back in those buildings.
Is. And I know someone yesterday told me dinner and a movie in New York could be around the corner. The movie theaters are opening with reduced capacity. Indoor dining. Will we get back to normal?
I'm staying outside.
Yeah, me too, actually. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Romans.
I'm Laura Jarrett. New Day is next.
The first of its kind in the Middle East. Qadir is set to join golf's most coveted experiences. The new signature championship golf course, designed by Jack Nicklaus.
I'm Selena Wang in Hong Kong.
In central Kalimantan, Indonesia. In Beirut. In Tehran. On the Congo River in Kinshasa.
Lagos, Nigeria.
In Moscow.
In London. Mexico City.
Manaus, Brazil.
The White House. And this is CNN.
I would say that actually work from work is what's the future. Work from home is what is to sustain us and what allows us to get through this very difficult, disruptive time. When you look at work from work, team building, project development, and execution, how do you develop culture? How do you have that hallway validation? You go to a meeting, what happens on the way to the meeting, away from the meeting? It's very different from you click on and off on Zoom. And I do think that people want to be at work. These young kids want to be at work. You've got a whole group of people whose lives have been altered, not just by going to work, but going to school. But they don't want to get killed. You know, they don't want to get sick. So long as we're in this interim period, I think that work from home will allow us to continue. Work from work will allow us to move forward.
한국 배파기 마지막 20개 하고 출근 준비하겠습니다. 돈 벌어야지.
The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? African and global industry leaders share their stories. On Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa, in association with Dangote.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.